Hey, 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 hey. It's your boy. Yeah. Sitting here with special friend, co-host, Renee Green.
Hello.
Yeah, we're starting out today with the we're almost where we left off a little bit in last week or our last episode when seeking to find love. We've got on this theme about love, and I'm kind of a romantic. I think my partner's more so than me. You
Yeah,
know,
you got it more so than a lot of men.
and that could be good or bad, I guess. It just kind of depends. I would imagine on how we really look at it. But I did find this little ditty that I thought would be nice to share, and it's entitled "Once Love Is Found," and it goes a little something like this. Once love is found, it no longer shouts, it settles. It trades the rush for rest, the chase for presence. Once love is found, it stops asking, "What can I get?" and begins whispering, "What can I give?" It becomes patient with silence, gentle with flaws, strong enough to stay when leaving would be easier. Once love is found, it doesn't complete you, it meets you, whole to whole, heart to heart. In that meeting, you discover the quiet miracle. Love isn't something you hold tightly, it's something you live freely every day. For once love is found, once again, it doesn't rush or shout, it settles in, teaching us that the real love isn't about chasing, it's about choosing, teaching us that love is patient, it listens more than it speaks, it stays when leaving would be easier. And the quiet truth is this: love isn't something to hold tightly, it's something to live out daily. Because once love is found, the heart no longer runs, it rests.
Mm.
Hey, hey,
Yeah,
hey. Oh, yeah, that's got a little depth there to it.
it does. There's so
Yeah,
much in that.
yes. And so it's like, hey, you know, uh, I think one of the things that we all seek for, especially if we've been gifted to have a loving relationship, and people say, well, how did you do it? You know, I think there's not a real definitive answer because all of our relationships were so different. Yours and Todd's were so different than mine and Cindy's, even though there were some similarities to it,
Mm-hmm.
and how we felt about how we loved each of them, and so. But I think one of the greatest things and questions that people have is how to persevere in a love that's found.
Mm-hmm.
Once you find it, how are you going to proceed uh, to persevere in a love that's found, that's not chased, it's not imagined, but it's been truly discovered. Like I've heard you say, and I've said, well, God gave us this relationship. Okay, so it was truly discovered. Uh, it requires intention more than intensity. And so I think that we've come up with some real points for our listeners. It's that some that will touch even us, uh, and how to persevere once you've got that connection. Because I think sometimes with a lack of perseverance, our relationships stale.
Yes,
You
so
know,
true.
and I know that each of us had one of those too.
Yes, we did. That's for sure.
And so, hey, our first one is choose commitment over convenience.
Mm-hmm.
Feelings rise and fall, but love deepens when you decide to stay present, even when it be easier to withdraw. Perseverance begins with the daily choice to show up. I know you've had some experiences in that, and I was just wondering, you might want to, kind of expand on it a little bit.
Well, yeah, the key word here is choice. Um, I think, once you decide that, yeah, this is what you have been gifted with, um, are you going to choose to commit, or are you going to take the easy way out? I mean, it's work. No relationship worth having is easy, and it does take commitment, and honoring that commitment, waking up every moment, every morning, saying, okay, today I'm committed to this relationship. I'm committed to showing up, regardless of how I might be feeling. I'm showing up, and that's the big key right there, is just making that choice.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, sometimes we get hesitant because we feel like we have to top what we did the day before.
Mm.
I was that way with my queen. When I did birthdays, the next one had to top the next one. So it's like we have to, I think, in our daily growth, there's nothing wrong with trying to be better than the day before.
Absolutely.
But I would say that it might suffice more so if we were able to blend into our next day
Mm-hmm.
the day before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like bettering a cake batter. When you first started out, you just went with the plain white cake.
Yeah.
Then the next day, you added, what would happen if I put a little chocolate powder in here? So you're bettering it
Yeah.
while keeping the base
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah. Absolutely.
you know. And so I think that maybe this next point might cover that when we say, tend what you treasure.
Mm.
Love isn't preserved by assumption, it
Mm.
thrives on care, listening without defending, speaking without wounding,
Mm.
and noticing what often goes unnoticed. What is watered grows. Oh, I
Mm.
can't touch that one. I'm leaving that one to you.
And all of those things water that relationship. Listening. I want to just say that again. It thrives on care. Listening without defending. You, when you communicate, there's just so much in how you communicate with someone, and setting aside your need to be right. Just listen. You know, um, and speaking without wounding. Think twice, speak once. It's that whole carpenter's rule,
Yeah,
except for
yeah,
communication. Speak twice, or think twice, speak once, and remember how you feel about that person as you're thinking about what you're going to say. Am I going to wound this person? How can I say this differently so that we can avoid that? And and also just taking, like you said, taking notice of the little things. Hey, he emptied the dishwasher, or took out the trash, or hey, that shirt looks really good on you. I haven't seen that before. Or, well, I wear it all the time.
yeah,
It's like, just those little things. Just open your eyes and take notice.
yeah.
I think.
And I think the hardest part for some of us is to yield into humility so that we're not still standing on our pride and ridiculing the
Mm-hmm.
other person.
Yeah.
And to realize that I think the hardest part sometimes is the joking ridicule,
Mm.
where the person kind of makes this little light joke
Mm-hmm.
and you can't tell whether they were intentionally wounding you or making fun of you, and I think that harms love
It does.
more than it helps.
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not certain how it can be diffused or what have you, because we live in a society that does that,
Mm-hmm.
where, and so our tendency lots of times is to smile, laugh it off, and then we make a little joke back,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're able to not really write off, but hide the initial hurt
Mm-hmm.
behind a little fake smile,
Yeah.
and so then we're basically telling the person that that was okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so
Yeah.
I think that you said a real important point when you said it comes to communication.
Mm-hmm.
If that's a situation where the little joke has taken place and it did hurt you, you
Mm-hmm.
didn't find any humor in it, that
Right.
you thought the person was truly being offensive towards you. I believe then is when we need to speak up and ask
Yeah.
and let them know, even if it was just a gesture of humor,
Mm-hmm.
uh, don't fight back and say, well, I didn't find it funny.
Right.
you know?
Especially if you're amongst friends.
Yeah.
That happened to me quite often, actually.
Yes. So you were telling us about that, and so, but there needs to be a time afterwards, a
Mm-hmm.
time of reflection, a time of recall,
Mm-hmm.
where I can specifically say, you remember when you said this and it was jokingly,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to let them know what they said,
Mm-hmm.
that it can be, then I believe we'll tend more to becoming what we treasure in that
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And I think that's really important. Most of y'all will read so much, get so much of this out of her book. I'm treading on eggshells here because I don't want to venture too far afield. But love isn't preserved by assumption, it thrives on care. And here's her main point: listening without defending, speaking without wounding. All this is Renee, and noticing what often goes unnoticed. What is watered grows. I mean, that's you.
In
That
a nutshell.
yes, it really is, and it's like, okay, um, maybe, it's so easy. Sometimes things can be so easy that we don't really perceive them,
Hmm. Yeah.
you know, because we've heard it all our lives,
Mm-hmm.
you know. No harsh words towards you. Stop calling your sister that. Stop calling your brother that, you know, because it's wounding them. But that just made us want to do it more,
Yeah.
and people would say, oh, that's so cute.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
and the little things that, notice the little things that go unnoticed. Remember when you had kids, if you had two kids or anybody out there had twins, they'd be arguing back and forth and they say, well, Billy started it.
Mm-hmm.
And so no sooner you turn your head, Billy's sticking out his tongue. So now the other one's retaliating. We have to learn noticing what often goes unnoticed,
Mm-hmm.
the little signs of hurt,
Yes.
the differences in what makes her smile sincerely and
Mm-hmm.
what makes you be able to read through that fake, false smile
Mm-hmm.
that she gives you, that she
Exactly.
presents, especially out in public like that. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. There's a lot to it, but most of that is I can look at that, and most of it just screams Renee Green.
Yeah. I learned from
Yeah,
experience.
yeah. To let grace be louder than pride.
Mm.
Because it tells us that misunderstandings are inevitable,
Mm-hmm.
which is true. Uh, but perseverance means valuing restoration over being right,
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness over scorekeeping,
Mm-hmm.
and humility over winning.
What was that word again? Humility.
Yeah, over winning. And I think
Yeah.
that's really hard to do. It really is, because we all want to be right,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
and there's times that We are screaming right with facts, and they're still not getting it.
Yeah.
You know?
Finally need to, okay, agree to disagree.
Yeah, you know. But it's that time when, how do I say, the frustration of seemingly not being understood. Not I'm not going to say not being heard,
Mhm.
but seemingly not being understood takes precedence over our humility.
Mhm.
You know, because sometimes what we feel makes true common sense to us.
Mhm.
And
Sure.
when there's no way that we can't see that you can't understand this,
Right.
you know, and it makes me get a little more defensive because I'm feeling like then you're trying to show triumph over me
Mhm.
because it's so elementary, you know, but
Right.
then at the same time, it's not taking up lightly what you
Mhm.
have given me and given to me in your
Mhm.
knowledge and what you said. It's
Mhm.
just that, okay, I basically accepted what you've said,
Mhm.
but now I'm trying to share another facet of that same thought that you expressed.
Mhm.
And as you know, I've been through one of those, and it kind of ended a whole what may have been or may not have been a good relationship with because we didn't have the ability to accept other means or other facets of what was being said.
Right.
And it was felt that this is the only way. You know,
Mhm.
what's that they say? This is where the rubber meets the road. It's my
Right.
way or the highway
Right.
type thing. And so, how do we avoid that? You know,
Yeah.
it's like,
Well, I think, like you said, just um, at times you just have to, like you said, give up that option to be right, you know, and just, um, I think we need to stay open minded and we need to remain teachable, actually. I think if we can't um, be open to other perspectives and other people's or our partner's way of thinking and at least making an attempt to understand and just put that, like you said, put that humility aside and just say, okay, help me understand this better, can you elaborate, ask questions, open-ended questions, so that you can at least attempt to better understand, where they're coming from. And sometimes, one thing that I've learned is that, I mean, for me to be understood was so important. It's like I can't stop talking until you understand, what I'm saying or what I'm dealing with or whatever the case may be. But that's one thing Todd really taught me is that he's not always going to understand, and that's okay as long as he's still in it and supporting and uplifting and attempting to understand. And he's got my back no matter what, whether he understands it or not. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So I think that's really important as well to take
You know,
note
I
of.
think I was in almost the opposite situation, you
Yeah.
know, because I wasn't hearing what was being said
Mhm.
because it wasn't coming out the way it was thought.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
It,
that happens.
but yeah, you know, yeah, my queen was that way. Because when she felt pressured,
Mhm.
what was up in her mind wouldn't come out
Okay.
and be expressed the way that she was really feeling it. And sometimes it would give you the impression that she had just become defensive. All of her defenses were now up,
Mhm.
and the claws had come out. And, you know, it's almost like that. Let's get it on. You know, but then you have to think back and know that's not her.
Right. That's
You
true.
know,
Yeah.
that had a lot to do with past
Exactly.
relationships. You
Mhm.
know, and I think that's where our humility must shine,
Mhm.
where where we listen, but we're not brash in saying, okay, let's just move on.
Right.
You know, we're not going to be able to resolve this.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's where we should learn that it's better to maybe just say, okay, okay, hey, thank you for sharing that with me. It's
Mm-hmm.
something I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know, because that leaves it open ended.
Mm-hmm.
It's not showing arrogance of any kind. It's not being defensive in any way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to do. It's hard to
It
do.
is.
And so I just hope that our listeners will begin to glean something from everything that we say here,
Mm-hmm.
because you really have to allow love to mature,
Right.
and that's really hard. I mean, found love changes shape. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
don't get stuck in every day's going to be the same,
Exactly.
because it's not. What is that they say? The honeymoon is over. And you're not. What begins as fire must become warmth. I mean, that's it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I was all fired up. Hey girl, yeah, come on, bring it on over here. You
Yeah.
know?
Right.
And then give them 6 months, as well, maybe,
Yeah.
hey, I've had a really hard day today.
Mm-hmm.
How can how can couples continue to allow their love to change shape?
I think all of what we have been talking about so far feeds into that. Feeds into, I mean, the humility, setting aside scorekeeping, listening with intent. All of these things um, allows the love to change shape, and as life hits you across the head with a 2x4 like it always will, a
Yes,
time or
indeed.
two, then as those things are implemented into growing that relationship, then it becomes that warmth. It's steady. It's reliable. It's life giving. Um, as those things, what begins as fire, even though it becomes warmth because it's steady and reliable, it also um, those things can also fan that flame a little bit too, and so it keeps that fire going underneath. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Is
but I
that
think,
making sense?
yeah, it makes great sense. But the problem that I know I have, and I know some of our listeners have, is the morning of the early sparks.
Mm,
It's like
sure,
remembering how great it was then.
sure.
You know, so it kind of fogs our view of how great it is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Through the maturation of everything, we lose
exactly.
how much closer we've gotten, how
Right.
much more meaningful our relationship is. Even if it's just that we speak more freely now.
Right.
We don't see that, and so I think it's said best when it says, "Don't mourn the early sparks, honor the deeper glow."
Totally.
And I really like that. I
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
like that about honor the deeper glow, because that's where our joy and our happiness is. That's where our future lies.
Yeah.
And
That's where you find home
yeah, then
and
it's
gas.
it's more than just an electric fireplace in a hotel room. It's an actual fireplace
Yeah.
in your home where you went out and you chopped the kindling, and you brought in the logs together, and now you're building this fire,
Yeah.
and now you're sitting back with it with your socks off and your feet getting warm, and you're holding each other, and you're laughing and you're smiling because you're able to look back on where you came from
Yeah.
to where you are,
Mm-hmm.
and to know that the more wood you put on that fire, the
Mm-hmm.
greater the glow and the warmth's going to be.
Exactly.
And so so I guess it leads all into what we both preach all the time: protect protect the we.
Mm,
You know,
yeah, exactly.
guard the relationship from neglect, comparison, and quiet resentments. Perseverance is often invisible work done long before problems become crisis. And I believe that's true. I've told people to have a date night.
Hmm.
My queen was high on that.
Yeah.
Date night. Date night was Thursday night, and do not breathe. Do not call our house. He can't do it. We can't do it, Jim. Standing fast. That's those boundaries you talk
Right.
about all the time. Stand fast. You know, but
Cut out the rest of the line.
yeah, guard the relationship. But I think sometimes if we don't, I think one of the problems with a standing date night is that it becomes too rigid. You have to think about it. You're no longer spontaneous. I've
Right.
got to have something for Thursday night to do.
Hmm.
And because we want to guard our relationship, we don't want our partner to think that it's not important to us to be
Hmm.
together. We don't want them to think that their wishes are being neglected. But at the same time, our heart's really not in it,
Yeah.
because now it's a
It's
must.
a routine.
Yeah, and it's routine. That's a good word, routine, for us to do. And so how do we work around this? Perseverance, it says, is often invisible work done long before problems become crisis.
Hmm.
And I,
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, you got to have that time together where you are um, giving into that relationship intentionally. Setting aside that time, but at the same time, you can't neglect. Just the like you said, the spontaneity and making it too routine. But then it puts pressure on one or the other person to, like you said, always make sure that there's something planned for Thursday night. But yet, I mean, I guess if you sit down and say, okay, but if we don't have anything, specific we're wanting to do, at least we're spending time together, watching a movie, curling up with popcorn, you know, and that's okay too. Or even sitting down and just having an intentional conversation, reflecting on those sparks that have grown into um, what was it, the glow, that deeper glow,
yeah,
but I think taking time to do those things in between those routine times, and not neglecting some spontaneity here and there,
yeah. I think the relationship has to go on throughout the week.
Yes.
Okay, I was watching a movie the other night, and they actually had a scheduled night to have sex. It
I
was,
saw that
yeah,
movie.
like,
Oh,
that's it. This is it. You missed it. Too bad. But it takes away from the spontaneity, and it makes it very rigid,
mhm.
which I believe can cause the relationship to fracture.
Yeah, I agree.
Because when you're at work or you're at school or you've got your day to yourself and you're doing all these things, and now you just want to come home and relax
Mhm.
and be with your significant other, maybe just like you said, enjoy a movie, or sometimes just enjoy the silence and be able to look over at your special one and see them relax, doing what they want to do. And
Yeah,
she would look over those glasses at me and just smile. It was like, hey,
yeah,
this is good, you know. And I think sometimes that's what it is, and what it takes. And I just hope that our listeners, as we conclude this part, there will be a part two, which will be posted for you on Thursday. But as we step out of this part of it, protect the we. We want to give you this part as verbatim from what we're looking at. Guard the relationship from neglect, comparison, and quiet resentments. We will pick up on the quiet resentments here shortly. Perseverance is often invisible work done long before problems become crises. And so for now, in this episode from Donald and Renee Green, this is Oh No. Yeah, baby.